Good evening. Welcome to Dog's Red Wine. We're in very cold Perrysburg, Ohio. It's been an interesting week. We're going to taste some old cheese that we started off with 7 weeks ago. We're going to try an unusual wine that you'll probably be interested in. We're going to talk about some of our favorite places to eat, some of our crazy girlfriends we've had in the past. So join us. Introduce yourself, Jason.
Hey, I'm Jason,
Okay,
co-producer of Dog's Red Wine. This is Bart. He loves attention. Usually Frankie gets up here, but today Bart was first, and he's getting...
He knows when we're starting to film, too.
Right? I think
and he's
so.
very interested in our cheese.
Yeah.
Go away.
This cheese is crazy.
Yeah, go lie down.
So what about this cheese?
Okay, so on our first show, I thought it would be fun to have some brie with our cheese, and it was really young.
Right, you had just bought it from...
It was like brand new cheese, probably brand new off the cheese farm, right? Right. So it was pretty solid. It was very immature, and not as they use the term ripe. If it's right, it was not ripe. So I left it on the counter for 6 weeks. And we just, we're going to flip to this in a second, but I cut all the white stuff off it, and there is some cheese left in there. It looks pretty good.
I saw it. It was like almost the size of a plate, and that white stuff was all mold. Is that what it was?
Well, no. Everything around the cheese, brie has that white coating on it.
Yeah.
And that's a form of mold. The cheese is alive.
Yeah.
So there's all these enzymes inside breaking down.
Yeah.
And that's what you want, is you want that nice, runny, almost smelly cheese I
can smell it.
Can you?
Yeah.
Well, taste it. See what you think.
So this isn't going to make me sick?
No, it's not.
Okay. So
it should have a lot more flavor than the first time.
So is this 6 or 7 weeks?
Well, we shot our first show in beginning of January, didn't we?
Yeah. This is episode 7.
Yeah.
So there's 7 weeks.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Well, way more flavor.
It tastes like a different cheese.
Well, a lot of ways it is a different cheese.
Mm-hmm.
So
6 weeks later.
Hasn't been refrigerated, and of course the mold grew all around it, but it's actually looking pretty decent under the mold. So there could be a lot left. I think it's worth trying. Let's have it with our wine. It'll be perfect. Not a lot, but perfect. You know what would go really well with this cheese?
A nice red wine?
No. This wine, and it's not red.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'll tell you why I got this wine after so you can see it's in a smaller bottle.
Right.
Wow, that brie has some flavor to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it just hangs on too, and not bad.
No.
I mean, not pungent or anything. It's just
very brie flavor.
Yeah,
and it seems a little saltier.
Yeah, I could see that.
But it could maybe it loses moisture, so it's concentrate. I don't really think of cheese as salty.
I've never seen anybody do that. You put it in a plastic bag, like a Ziploc bag, and you just left it, or was it a Ziploc bag?
I did. The reason I learned about this is I was up in Seattle, and the Seattle Cook Show. This was like 18 years ago. And I met this guy. I'm sure he's passed away. Looked just like Benny Hill. And his name was James Cook. And he had James Cook. He was a cheesemonger. And he was giving a presentation. I was like, I want to interview this guy after the show. And so I went and met him at his store, which was in the basement of this shop near the lake there. And went downstairs, and he had this little table, and he pulled out this piece of cheddar. Wow, right? Cheddar. And he did a really thin slice, and he gave us each a thin slice. And I'm like, thin slice? What am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
And he's like, put it on your tongue and let it melt. So I'm like, oh. He goes, hey, bite into it. You feel the crystals? I'm like, oh, I do. He goes, that's a cheddar cheese from the original cheddar farm in England. And it was a couple hundred years old, I think.
Wow.
They had just kept on making it. And I was like, so I learned more about cheese from that guy. And what he was saying was, he was Scottish, I think. And he was saying that his parents would not let him eat anything sweet.
Okay.
They were totally anti-sugar, but they let him eat cheese. And he's like, well, so I got into cheese. And he goes, I'd set it out on the counter, and then I keep tasting it to see how it matured and the flavors. And he had amazing cheese. He really did. And I had no idea there was all these politics about imported cheeses.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Oh, yeah, they fight about it. Like, it comes through the border, and he said that sometimes his cheese would get held up for weeks because there'd be some, turf war going on.
Right.
So anyway, take a sip of that and see if that goes well.
So this is very unique. So
I'll give you a little bit. You may not have tasted this type of wine, and very often when we taste this kind of wine, it's at the end of a meal. So we're usually a little bit buzzed.
Yeah. It is a sweeter wine.
Yes,
like
it's totally sweet.
Definitely
and
a
I
sweet
almost
dessert
never
wine.
enjoy a sweet wine.
Yeah.
But I think, a little bit at the end of a meal, the right meal.
Yeah.
There's like 3 they call them dessert wines.
Right.
That I know of. I'm sure there's more, but there's ice wine, and there's a botrytis, or it's sort of interchangeable, botrytis or sauterne. And botrytis is really interesting. It's actually a mold.
Oh, really?
It gets on the grape later on as it matures and gets a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And that adds to the flavor. So you actually want mold on the grapes. And I'll look this up, but I think that mold is the same mold that wiped out a lot of the European wines.
Oh, interesting.
A while back.
Huh. And then a port, right? Is a port considered a
No,
dessert
a
wine?
port is actually a reduced wine.
Okay.
And that's why it's thick and sweet. And,
okay.
And it's supposed to be from Portugal. Although these days, a lot of people just call it maybe they put the word style under it in tiny, tiny words.
Sure. Well, this is different. I've never had a wine like this.
You haven't?
No.
Oh, okay. That's great.
So it's very full bodied. It's like thick. Or maybe that's just the flavor I'm tasting, but it's like...
Now I know you're going to come up with a bunch of flavors in this.
Yeah.
Because I even come up with some, and
right.
I'm not as good as you are at picking those flavors up.
Right. This is almost like a nectar, I mean, I pick up...
And I like to, if I'm going to serve this at the end of the meal, I like the dessert to be almost sour.
Yeah, sure.
So that the sweetness is a complement to the dessert. If you haven't like a chocolate decadence, I wouldn't do.
Sure.
It's just too much sweet going on there.
Yeah.
But maybe berries.
Sure.
And a little sour cream.
Yeah.
So you've got a little bit of sourness, a little bit, and if the berries aren't too sweet.
Yeah. So I'm picking up, it's almost like a pear juice or a apricot juice. You know what I mean? Like a syrup. Like let's say you opened a can of syrup and it's like pulling that note. And I think that's
it doesn't even taste like alcohol's in it, does it?
No, I wouldn't. I would if you would serve this in a juice glass. I would be confused, but I would think
buzzing off the grape juice, but not know why.
But it's very sweet, though. It's very sweet. I could see.
Well, you're not gonna guess the country.
No,
the year
no.
On this one.
Yeah.
So it is not American.
Right. Where is this one from?
I'll give you one guess. I'll give you one clue. Elon.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know
where he's from.
I don't know where he's from.
South Africa.
Oh, okay. I have some coworkers and stuff that are from South Africa and the aviation, and the owner of the company is South African, And
Must be friends with Elon.
I had some good wine, some good South African wine a few weeks ago down with them.
Oh, really?
In,
There are some good South African wines for sure.
Yeah, but nothing like this. So, okay. I wouldn't even know what grape it was because it's like I said, I've never tasted one like this.
I don't know if it's necessarily important. I think this is Muscat grape.
Okay.
Now with the cheese, it
now
should be like
this.
really good.
Oh yeah.
So that would be a good dessert, and often you finish the meal off with a little cheese and fruit.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right.
Sauterne, as a port would be, or something like that.
Right.
So I first went to Kazmar's, and he doesn't carry any dessert wines because he told me that no one buys them.
Good reason not to carry them.
So he goes, I try, but no one picks it up. So I picked this up at Churchill's, and the lady at Churchill's she just knew everything about this wine, or Sauternes and that kind of stuff. So it was cheap. It was like $12 or $14, which is not bad for a Sauterne. Some of them can be very expensive. I think they have a Sauterne there it was like $120.
This one makes me want to eat with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like rather than just, this wouldn't be one where you sit in front of the fire, but this is, like you said,
Especially
a
has
perfect
some cheese.
Yeah, exactly. Sitting around in front. Yeah. But it makes me crave the cheese combination with that is amazing.
Well, this has so much flavor now.
Right.
Than when we first tried it 7 weeks ago.
But they're complementary.
Oh, very much so, yeah.
Nice grill.
So, what another week in DC?
They're, I wonder if it's going to settle down, or if it's just going to keep.
I don't think Trump has any interest in it settling down. I think his plan is to just keep throwing things at them because we're used to a news cycle, right? Mm-hmm. And the news cycle would decide what the cycle is, not the event.
Right.
So if it was Trump, burped at the table, then for 5 days it's Trump burped at the table, Trump burped at the table. Well, now if he burps at the table, 10 seconds later he comes out with something else, right? So that's old news, and I don't think they know what's going on or happening to him. And of course, we've got the process of okaying his cabinet, which has just been absurd.
Right.
Especially, I'm most shocked by how Robert Kennedy was treated. No, I'm his politics and mine are about as far away as you can get. And I'm no fan of lawyers or attorneys. I really am not.
Right.
But the way they treated this Democrat, from
it's
one of the most
Democrat
families in the history of the United States. I mean, the Kennedys were royalty before.
Right. And even his platform, his when he was campaigning, I mean, he's very pro-American, basic needs. I mean, he's there for. He wants to reform healthcare. Like, if he wants to reform healthcare, he's going to try and do what's best for the American people, not what's in the best interest of the pharmaceutical lobbyists.
Well, the pharmaceutical lobbyists need unhealthy Americans. Mm-hmm. I don't know how much is spent on diabetes every year, but it's I'm guessing billions. When you look at the heart disease that's caused by the kidney failure and blah blah blah, and a lot of the diabetes that the country's suffering through is type 2.
Sure. Oh yeah.
Which used to be called adult onset.
Yeah. But now you have childhood type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, that's why they stopped using the term adult onset.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is metabolic disorder, which means you're just abusing your body with food.
Yeah. I eat, I think I eat very healthy. I eat balanced, you know. I grew up in South Dakota. My grandparents were cattle farmers, and they had pigs and chickens and corn and wheat. I mean, they were back then. It was just farming. You farmed it, but
it was fresh.
Yeah, but
Everything was fresh.
But I do have a palate for red meat for sure. I have probably at least a nice steak every week. So.
Well, the science is on our side when it comes to eating steak. I mean, for years, you know, our government tried to tell us that we shouldn't eat beef, but we should eat pasta and bread and all that crap all day long. And if you looked at the pyramid, especially the last one, it was made to get fat.
It seemed like it. I mean, that's what it did.
If you actually ate the portions, you could not be fat.
Right.
It's too much food for most people.
Right. They changed it to a plate, though, now, right? Now it's a plate.
You know, I haven't looked at the new one. Have you?
I think now it's a plate, and it's divided into... It's a lot healthier. Not going to be your fan, but Michelle Obama, I think, was the one that is credited for redoing the food pyramid, at least for the schools.
I am not a fan of her. You're correct, and I've never talked about her. But I actually was on the side of better food at the schools. Mm-hmm. And I had looked into what schools spend.
Oh, I don't know what they spend, but I've seen
their
food.
That's a big part of it, right?
Right.
So I tried to look into it in Las Vegas, and it took me forever to get an answer. And a friend of mine was the principal of a school.
Yeah.
You think he'd be, oh, it's this. It took forever. No, this was almost 20 years ago. It was something like $8 a person.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty good money. I mean, I can tell you right now, if you give me $8 retail to make you lunch, I can make you a very tasty, very nutritional lunch.
Right.
What I found was, and the reason I was suspicious is I donated time to the Boys and Girls Club, and they would during the summer we had like these already made meals for the kids. It was just from the school district.
Okay.
And you can look at it and go, that's terrible. What they're giving these kids, you know? And at best, it was $1 worth of food. At best.
Oh, but they were paying $8. So some content.
So 90% of the money is getting siphoned off before it even gets to the kid.
Yeah.
And I think that, so Michelle was like, oh, it's got to be fresh. It's got to be this. Well, now it's a little hard to source that.
Right.
And give them something they'll eat. It didn't change. They still stole all the money before they... So now the kids have $1 worth of beans. It's just...
Yeah.
It's criminal. And I think that's what we're getting to in Washington, D.C., is the bureaucracy gets to spend and enjoy all the money.
Yeah.
And the peons at the end of the line get...
Well, if they don't watch it, I mean, there's a lot of countries out there where doesn't matter how much the government gets, it never gets to the bottom. Or you can see it even right now. You can go to South Dakota, Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I think maybe it's a different one, but it's out in the Black Hills of South Dakota. It's an Indian reservation. They're getting money, but it's never reaching the people that need it. So they actually have, their citizens that are starving, and if there's a casino, it's like gets siphoned off with Mexican cartel are in the U.S. Indian reservation casinos for sure, But they actually do a lot of their drug sorting and laundering on the reservation because they can buy off,
well, they're also considered their own nation within our nation,
well,
right? So the federal government really can't tell them what to do. Not even the sheriff can go on the land without permission.
Right. So, I mean, if you make a deal with the Mexican cartel and you're on your reservation, I mean, it's hard to stop them.
Yeah. So. Yeah, out of historically, I would say if anybody deserves reparations, it would be the American Indians because our government has messed them over so many times. Like, oh, uranium? Never mind. Maybe you shouldn't live there where we moved you. Yeah. Let's move you over here.
Right.
And they got screwed. I know there's a lot more to the history of the American Indians. I mean, they were not just all peace-loving.
Right.
They were killing each other and all sorts of other, but that's human nature.
Right.
I think that's gone on forever, everywhere.
Yeah. The most dramatic and impactful knowledge that I gained was the Denver Art Museum. It was had a thing called the Indian Holocaust, or maybe it was just American Holocaust or whatever. But it was the wars and what the armies would go in and rape and kill the children, and just like it was incredible. It deserved to be
wipe them out.
It was
really.
And when you call it a Holocaust, I mean the stuff that was documented that they did, that was even admitted to, is just it's a Holocaust. It's definitely nasty. But yeah. Anyway, how about a better subject?
Yeah,
pick one out of the hat.
Yeah, go for me.
Sure, you can pick one out of the hat.
I might have to put my glasses on to see what the hell I pulled out of the hat. I think this is one of yours. It's folded in half.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a thicker pen next time. A story about your parents or parent.
Parent, yeah.
Parent?
I was gonna put dad or mom, but I just thought you could pick one.
I'll talk about my dad.
Okay.
I could tell you many stories about both, but my dad was born in New Zealand. He only had his mother, and he went to school and became a mining engineer. And he was a class of 9 in Dunedin School Mines. And at the time, that would have been in the 50s, I think. So that would be mid-50s, late 50s. So at the time, in New Zealand, the country would pay for your education, and then you'd work for the country for a few years.
Sure.
And that's how you paid off your education. And he wanted to get the hell out of New Zealand. Because in the 50s, New Zealand was very communist, actually.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people don't think about New Zealand.
Yeah.
I've read up on it. At the time, it was the most communist country in the world.
Wow.
And he didn't like communism, so he wanted to leave. And he needed to settle his debt with the state first. And he had the hardest time even finding out how to do it because no one had ever done it. No one had ever paid off their tuition before.
Wow.
And he borrowed the money from an uncle who was doing pretty well at the time to pay it off. But it took him like 3 different departments because no one, I don't know, talked to them.
Yeah.
And so he paid it off, and he went and worked in Australia for a little bit at a mine there called Broken Hill.
Okay.
And then went to Malaya, and then was visiting his brother in San Francisco, and went to a party and met my mom and stayed in the U.S.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So she grew up in the San Francisco area then.
Actually, Mom grew up right here in Perrysburg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she was born in Columbus.
Yeah.
And Granddad was at Owens Corning. And so she grew up mostly in Perrysburg. And then when they moved into the house down the street, Mom had went off to college.
Nice.
So she never actually lived in that house down the street.
Okay. Nice. Nice.
I think they had a little bit of time in Darien.
Where's that?
Connecticut?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what I got.
Well, what about your parents?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
I will go with. I'll go with my mom this time. Sure. Just a little bit. It's sweet, so that's plenty.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's a little bottle.
Yeah. So my mom is an amazing hunter, both with archery and with a rifle, and she's a petite woman that goes to church and likes
she
to,
still hunt?
and she still hunts, and she goes all
May
over.
I ask how old Mom is?
Mom is 70. She's going to turn 73 in a couple weeks here.
And she's still. What does she shoot?
She her main thing every year she usually does a couple deer, and usually one a year she'll go on an elk hunt either in South Dakota or Colorado. But she's had magazine articles written about her, and she's taken big trophies of deer and elk, and in the saloon at the house, the big elk horns. That she actually shot that one.
Ah, cool. So is your mom still in the home you grew up in?
It's not the home I grew up in. She is still in the same town, but she remarried, and they've lived in that same house now probably for 20 years.
Gotcha.
But it's a small town of South Dakota, and that's where she grew up, is about an hour and a half from there on a farm. So
Pick one out of the hat.
all right, let's see what we got. Okay, so a story that you heard that is not yours.
Story that I heard that is not yours. Well, I can't.
Yeah, anything, yeah.
Yeah, the one that just came to mind, I can't actually tell because they'd censor us. Story? I'm going to let you go first, and maybe that'll remind me of one.
All right. So I heard from like the old captains I used to fly with when I first started out, and they used to fly back in the Pan Am days with they used to call them stewardesses, now flight attendants, but the stewardess used to have to meet their weigh-in. They had to be under 140 pounds, and they had to be, I think, like a minimum of like 5'6" or 5. They had to be a profile. I mean, there was no, but the parties they would have, guy said, and he's talking about when he was like a junior co-pilot, about like these captains that were like in the 60s and stuff, and it was a lot like Catch Me If You Can, you know what I mean? They
Sure.
go in and they'd have these parties on the layover in Paris and stuff like that, and he said he went in there one time and the only thing the captain was wearing was just his necktie. And he said it was like the norm, because they'd have like 24 to 48 hour layovers in Paris at a 5-star hotel.
And you're making pretty good money as a pilot.
Yeah.
Now, the stewardess, were they making good money in those days?
Not really. It just depends as far as, I think they were making average money.
Yeah.
But at one point, they used to require the nurses to or the stewardesses to either be nurses or go to nursing training and stuff like that.
So if anything happened on the plane kind of thing?
Yeah. But
Well,
that was a while ago.
So a lot of that changed because of feminism, right? Because
I think so, and you know
it was sort of a sexist world.
Yeah, and it you know, and the there's a lot of males started getting into being a flight attendant, you know, so that changed the dynamics also, and
when they deregulated, it got a lot more casual.
Yeah, that was 1978. That was a long time ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder what the price of a flight today, because it was really expensive.
It was really expensive, right?
You know, like phone bill also. You know, there was
right
one phone company.
Right. Yeah.
It was something ridiculous, like $1.20 a minute.
Right.
I remember for my mom to call New York on off hours.
I remember that. Yeah, you had off hours, and yeah, you had to wait. After you got past a certain time, it would be like cheaper.
Now you can talk on your cell phone to anyone in the world.
Yeah, for usually
Unlimited.
free. Yeah, it's crazy. So, all right. So that was a story, a little one.
It's one came to mind, and it went out as the door in my head as fast because I got into your story, so I forgot mine.
That's fine. It was just.
I'll come up with it.
Yeah,
I promise.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I'll reach into the. Oh, I might have. Did we talk about eggs at all last time?
We did. We did. We talked about the bird flu and the price of eggs a little bit. But yeah.
Well, it's also wintertime, you know, so
Yeah.
that affects the price of eggs. And it's coming out more that this whole egg thing was contrived.
That's what somebody said. So I don't know any details at all about this. So.
Well, first of all, the 100 million chickens that have been culled, none of them had chicken flu.
So
if they go in to a farm and one chicken has the flu or tests positive, and that can be a false positive, they kill them all.
Yeah, right. So they kill the whole coop, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not really. If you didn't kill the chickens that lay eggs, they'd still be laying eggs.
Right.
And I gather they're also being vaccinated somehow. I don't know if they do it through the feed. I can't imagine they go up and.
I think they do have like a little, like where they stick them.
Do they really? Okay.
My aunt in Los Angeles area has chickens, and she had to give them shots. And I think she actually gave them shots.
Well, okay. I didn't think they'd actually go around.
Yeah, I think
that's sort of weird, right?
Yeah.
I think it's sort of like the COVID shot where it can also infect you. And from what I'm hearing, that by giving them the vaccine, they actually infected a bunch of chickens.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
You know,
and
it seems like everything's a mess. You know, it doesn't seem like they can do anything right.
Yeah. So also, I mean, how it gets, I mean, the other day I was at Kazmeyer's and they only had about 10 cartons of eggs left, and the cheapest one was $7.99, you know, for a dozen eggs.
Okay, so people are probably using less eggs right now because of the price, especially if you're, lower income, I'm sure. But it'll come back because eggs are going for $8 a dozen. Farmers are going to want to sell some eggs. So they're going to, I don't know what the cycle of a chicken is, how long between it hatching and producing eggs, but I don't think it's that long. It shouldn't take too long to catch up.
Right. I would think, I mean, I don't know if you killed the chicken, and I don't know how long a chicken has to go before. We'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
How long a chicken can go when it can lay its first egg. I'm thinking less than a year.
I think so, probably.
Yeah. So
so many, they've learned how to really get these chickens to grow up pretty fast.
I don't think that's the kind of chickens. Right, but
No,
that's
I mean,
part of
like
the problem.
eating chickens.
Right, but
when we were a kid, we're probably months old.
Yeah.
And now they're weeks old.
Yeah, and a lot of them are full of hormones and stuff too.
Sure, you know, or what they feed them and how they feed them, and I'm sure that's probably the case for a lot of our food.
Right.
And it's bad enough they're doing that, but now we have maybe someone who is going to get down to the other things like carbohydrates.
Yeah.
I think probably the biggest health problem the United States has is refined carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Taking some wheat or some rice and running it through a factory and doing all sorts of damn things to it, and then putting it in a package, and then putting it in a box and put it on a shelf.
Yeah.
And people just eat it like it's candy.
Yeah.
'Cause it sort of is candy.
Yeah.
You know, carbohydrate, if it's 100% carbohydrate, it's still going to become 100% glucose in your system.
Well, where it originally got that push, I think, is around the Nixon era, and President Nixon era, and around that time, maybe a little before him, the price of food and the fluctuation in the price of food was like a huge deal for most Americans, especially middle class and lower class. And it would fluctuate incredibly swings of food prices. And it was a platform that they were running on. So one of the presidents, if it wasn't Nixon, it was around that area. But they ran on a platform that they're going to stabilize the food prices. Well, how they ended up doing it is by subsidizing the sugar farmers, and they just started pumping in. There's some really good documentaries on like the diseases that the sugar causes. You know, you mentioned diabetes as one of them, but I mean, it's incredibly cheap, especially when
it's filling.
Yeah.
No one's going to starve to death.
Right.
You're just going to die of early death from coronary or bad kidneys. Yeah, it has become a problem. And I think that's what's cool about Robert Kennedy is he's just pointed it out. And during the hearing, they're like, are you going to stop people from eating something? And he's like, no, I'm just going to tell them what happens to you when you do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just don't know the difference. I was sort of blown away. I asked Ocean a couple weeks ago. I was pointing at things in the kitchen. I go, you know, tell me, is that a carbohydrate, a protein, or a fat? She got it all right.
Oh,
so
good.
she knows.
Right.
But I don't think the average kid could do that.
Probably not. I mean, it's unfortunate.
I don't think the average adult could do that, to be honest with you.
Well, it's surprising because you cook, I cook. I mean, and we know our foods and stuff, but a lot of people, I mean, they don't know what's in their food. And one thing I noticed when I was traveling and meeting people from other countries, other people from other countries are shocked that the U.S. citizens don't know and don't demand to know what their food supply in their where it comes from, what's in it. So, there, Bart. It's okay.
It's all right, Bart. Sounded like someone was outside.
Yeah. I think it was the neighbor.
We'll put Bart outside. That'll chill him out.
So, like,
22 degrees outside.
It's chilly out.
We had an ice storm last night, but it really didn't.
Thought it was going to be.
It
worse.
wasn't as bad as they.
Right.
The kids could have gone to school today, I think.
I think, yeah, it would have been icy. They would have had to get up a little bit.
Especially they have Friday off
and
Monday off, you know, so
now they got a
5-day weekend.
Yeah. So, bonus mini stay-at-home break, I guess. Long President's Day weekend.
Yeah. Oh, is it? It is President
Monday, yeah.
Monday?
Monday, yeah.
So that was my mom's birthday. She
Oh.
was born on Lincoln's birthday.
Okay.
They combined them. In Washington Lincoln's, they combined them when they added Martin Luther King Day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And, yeah, I guess you can only have so many federal holidays a year.
Okay.
They
I'm not sure. Oh.
I don't know what why, but
Right.
you know.
Yeah. So
I always wondered who comes up with it's chocolate fudge day.
probably the chocolate fudge.
Right. I mean, can we just declare days? Today's chicken pot pie day.
Today
Says the Swansons.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, let's see what we got here.
Says the dog in your lap.
Your favorite meal to cook?
My favorite meal. I get asked all the time, and I love making something I've never tried to make.
Okay.
So if someone says a friend of my mom's loved Moroccan lemon chicken.
Okay.
And I actually had the clay pot.
Oh, sure.
By accident, and I never used it, so that was great. And it called for dried black lemons. I never even heard of dried. They were there on Amazon, and I made it, and they came over, and he said it was the best he ever had.
Wow.
And so it's fun to make a dish you've never had because it's sort of a challenge.
Yeah.
Last week, I especially around here, there's that chicken paprikash.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Tony Pacos is famous for it.
Right.
And a lot of Polish, live around here and a lot of, I think, settled in the Toledo areas. So I'd heard of it, and I'm like, well, I got this chicken. So I made my version. It's not the same as the ones, but it was the same main ingredients.
Yeah.
It came out so good. I had 4 bowls of it.
I had it for the first time about a year and a half ago. And my girlfriend made it for me, and she's like, "You've never had chicken paprikash?" I'm like, "Never heard of it," but
I'll make everybody a batch.
Yeah. But
I didn't serve it with spetzel.
Which is the noodle,
spetzel?
like the noodle, right?
Well, it's a fresh noodle. Like I think it's just like egg, water, and flour.
We used Reams, the Reams noodles.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And those are like in the frozen section. Those are really good. I mean, as a quick
I know how to make
substitute.
spetzel. It takes a minute to make it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I actually I made spetzel because I told the guy who wanted to hire me. We were going through the interview process, and I told him I could make fresh pasta in under 3 minutes. He's like, "No way." I said, "Start your watch." And the first thing I did is get a little bit of water boiling, and I made the batter. And I didn't have it. They have a spetzel machine.
Okay.
And I didn't have one, so I pulled out the tray in my little toaster oven. It had holes in it.
Yeah.
And I pushed it through that with the spatula, so it dripped to the hot water. And once they were made, I threw it. I already had the pan of butter going. Threw it in there, sauteed it for a minute, put some salt and pepper, threw it, and I was right on 3 minutes. That's all you're hired.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to have some of yours. Because I just had the Reams noodle version.
I could probably open a restaurant just based on that dish.
Oh, especially around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think my favorite go-to that everybody enjoys is my chicken noodle soup. I've never had somebody say that, and it's a standard recipe.
Sure.
And I mean, my kids will ask for it. It's like out of the blue, but it's just like what you'd think is just like, but you do it from scratch, everything from scratch. You boil the chicken, you leave the bone in and everything, and then add
overcook the chicken so the meat comes right off.
Yeah, and then pull the bones out. And I do it in a big pot because everybody likes it so much. I usually divvy it out to neighbors and stuff. So I'll do it in like a shrimp boil pot, where you can boil all the chicken and then just pull the basket out, and then that way you don't lose any of the broth, and you can pull the bones out and stuff and put it back in, and onion and carrots and celery and the spice. I like to use, if I can find the organic carrots that still have the greens on it, I'll chop up those greens too.
You throw it in there?
Throw it in there, It's so simple, but it's so delicious. Everybody loves it.
Huh.
So especially if you're sick, like or cold, like
there is scientific evidence that chicken soup does help a cold.
Yeah, they say the salt and the broth and So and then the veggies, yeah. So, but yeah.
I like good chicken soup. My mom used to make a chicken couscous soup.
Mm.
And couscous is a Moroccan pasta.
Yeah.
Tiny pasta, semolina pasta. And we used to make it for, like, I think it was May Day Festival. We'd have lines of people for it. And no one knew what it was, right? Because no one, especially in the 70s, couscous?
Yeah.
What the heck is couscous? I don't know if people use it. Do you use couscous?
Sometimes if I'm doing like
so you're familiar with it.
Yeah. So it's a good rice substitute, or if
Absolutely,
you don't want something like that. Something if you don't want to just have the empty carbs.
We used to make a batch of it in a restaurant, and we put it in a plastic container.
Yeah.
And let it chill, and it becomes like a brick. And we'd slice it and saute it. So what's the cornmeal one you can do that way as well? The Italian cornmeal.
I don't know if I've ever had it. I'm not sure.
It'll come to me in a sec.
All right. Yeah.
I'm remembering every moment.
I've only had Moroccan food once, and it was at a Moroccan restaurant in Portland, Oregon, and I had some horrible food poisoning. Had to be that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and don't know why. The only reason I know that is because my girlfriend and my uncle both had like this nasty food poisoning. It had to be from that, because that was the only meal that we ate together. Yeah. Because I originally thought I got like a bad rotisserie chicken, but that was the meal before that. When I found out my uncle got sick too, that was the only common meal we all three had. So, but it was nasty. But the food before that, it was delicious.
Before you got sick.
Yeah.
Now, was it one of those places where you sit on the floor and the big brass
and
trays?
You eat everything with your hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, maybe all three of you didn't just wash your hands.
Right. It could have been something like that. So you picked up something and the table was dirty or something.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
you think they have better stomachs in Morocco, right?
Right. So go ahead, your choice. I think dealer's choice.
What do we got here? Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to put my glasses on. There's a rabbit in there. Did you see that?
We'll pull it in here. I'll just pull Frankie out of that.
Favorite dining experience?
Oh, okay.
Well, for me, I know what it is.
Okay.
So, in '84, my parents bought a Peugeot.
What's
French
that?
car, 504.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And in those days, they had what was called a gray market.
Yeah.
So it was cheaper to buy the car in France, drive around for 2 weeks, all four of us, the whole family, and ship it back. That was cheaper than just to buy in the car at the dealership in San Francisco or Oakland.
Because of the import fees and all that?
It was a used car.
Oh, sure. Oh.
So it came in different tax-wise and stuff.
Okay.
So we flew out there. It was in Easter vacation, which is colder.
Yeah. And
we went down south. We were down near a place called Vézelay, near Fontainebleau, and my dad was at a kiosk with a map, and he asked the guy standing next to him, where have you eaten any good restaurants around?
Yeah.
And it was actually a German guy, and my dad spoke a little bit of German, so that worked. And the guy was like, "Oh, we went to this restaurant called Les Rants in Vézelay." He goes, "Incredible. Most incredible meal I've ever had." So we made a reservation. It was, they also had an inn there, but it was booked. So we got a place down the street. And they were selling the franc was before the euro.
Oh, right.
And it was like 12 francs to the dollar, which was incredibly good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, made things so cheap. And we had, I think, with everything, 22-course meal. We were there for 4 hours. And it was actually I think 3 or 4 star Michelin
Wow.
restaurant.
Wow.
And with everything, $320.
For how many people?
4.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
22 courses.
Yeah.
Now that would be $1,000 a piece. I don't think that particular restaurant exists anymore.
Yeah.
That was 84, like I said. So
Yeah.
it's been a while.
Yeah.
That chef probably is not around anymore. Even,
Yeah.
he could have been my age, but he wasn't.
Right.
You're not going to be that good.
Right, right,
Michelin
right.
Guide restaurant.
Right.
That would be, and I hadn't gone to culinary school yet, so I really couldn't pick apart the food.
Sure.
So a lot of it's still a mystery.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But maybe an inspiration to you for like a little bit, maybe at least a hint of it.
Yeah,
Or inspiration.
No, it wasn't really that way because
Okay.
we ate out so often, and my parents were so into food. And
Yeah.
I know I was
Yeah.
a pretty good cook by then.
Yeah.
At that age, so I wasn't really, and I don't think I had decided to go to culinary school. At that age. Maybe.
Yeah.
And it probably did have an influence on me.
Yeah.
I just never really thought about it.
Right.
To be honest with you.
Right. I have two. So my going back to my college days, I was a foodie early on, and my wife was a foodie, and I don't know if it was right after we were married. We were married young. I was married when I was 22, and she was 23, so we were pretty young. I don't know if it was when we were dating or when we were married, but anyway, I went to this nice chef-owned and operated place called Sanders in Grand Forks, North Dakota. 8 tables total in this original little place. Just small. The whole entire seating area was probably the size of your living room here.
Oh, okay.
And people, I mean, it was expensive too. So, I mean, we were spending a big portion of our paychecks.
It was a special night to go out.
Right. So I remember sitting there and ordering, and they always had like unique chef, curated dishes and stuff. And I was sitting there and looked over at the table next to me that was only about 3 feet away, and it was the governor, the current governor at the time. And we just like visited. He was getting input from these young people at the restaurant. He was asking our advice on politics, or at least our viewpoint, maybe not our advice, but our viewpoints on different things. And it was just like hobnobbing with, that was fun. That was the first one. And then jump way forward, 30 years later, I'm in Greece, Santorini, Greece. And we got in there after getting on a ferry. We went from Mykonos, Greece, on a ferry over to Santorini, Greece. Don't recommend. I would fly. It was
Isn't that where all the white places on the cliff there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So,
Which I think is prettier than it is to visit, right?
it's pretty
Sort of a pain in the butt to visit.
Yeah, it's super touristy, and it's impossible to not go there during tourist season because the island basically closes down.
Oh, gotcha.
It's either tourist season or it's
off.
or it's
Right,
off,
gotcha.
and people don't really live there, but it's a little bit touristy. It's a little bit it's a lot touristy. Like, we went to the first little gift shop thing, and we thought we were going to find all these unique Greek things, and it was a guy from Kansas City, Kansas, United States, that owned and operated the place and had all these trinkets from China.
Oh, God.
But that was the cool part was we got there and we were walking down. I think there's like 300 and some steps to get down to this restaurant, and we got down there, and it was a restaurant that overlooked the bay and sunset over the Greek Mediterranean, and they had, and I'll put a picture up of these octopus that they had caught, and they were hanging them out to dry by their sign. So you had these octopuses that were hanging there, and I was with my two of my daughters, and we sat there after a day.
Great.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was actually. It was like, because we ended up getting a lobster spaghetti, and they came out and they carved the lobster and like broke the claws open for them and stuff like that. So that was probably the most memorable, because I was with my two of my daughters, and just that sunset, and it was a long walk down those stairs, and there's donkeys and stuff.
Yeah, and you had to go back up the stairs?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, at night, because it was dark then.
I'd be like, helicopter!
So,
I have a story came into mind that is someone else's. I have two funny boat stories, because I used to work on boats, so I'd hear a lot of them. But one is I heard from another captain, and he was telling me a story about this captain that was captain of a private boat. Mm-hmm. So this New Jersey couple would come down. They had a $500,000 boat, 45-foot boat. And this guy had a drinking problem. And the owner was on the boat. So usually the captains, if they had a drinking problem, they knew better than to drink while the owner's on the boat,
sure.
Right? Well, this guy was on the top floor of the boat, and below him was the back deck. The owner was sitting there talking to his wife or friends, I think, in the back deck. And he was on the top deck, and he's drinking, right? And the glass slips out of his hand and smashes below him.
Yeah.
And he takes another sip and doesn't even know he's dropped the glass. So the owner fires him.
Yeah.
On the spot. He was so drunk when he woke up in the morning, he didn't remember having been fired. That's bad.
That's bad. Yeah. So he just started working again.
Right.
People are looking at him. Like,
the other guy, what are you doing here? I fired you last night. He's like, you did?
That's pretty funny.
Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
That's not one of my stories.
Yeah, no, but it's fun. It
was another story that went around the Caribbean. So there's a class of boats called bareboaters.
Okay.
So it's a sailboat, but no captain and crew. So you pretty much have to know how to sail on your own. Mm-hmm. So usually one person, maybe three couples get on this boat, and one person knows how to sail. Well, the bareboat, I think it's Channel 12, is like the channel that everybody monitors.
Okay.
So if something comes up, you go, I'll talk to you on Channel 15. So
sure.
So a bareboater, he's like, hey, bareboater, he's calling out, and he goes, I'm out of anchors. And so everybody's like, I got to hear this one. And they're all, well, switch to Channel 15. So everybody in the Caribbean switches to Channel 15 to hear about the boat that's run out of anchors, right? Yeah. And he's all, we're on day 4 and I don't have any anchors left. And they're like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, the boat only came with 3 anchors. And they're like, so what did you do with the other 3? And he goes, well, I cut them off. So people actually found out where they were docked or where they hooked up and retrieved all these anchors, because they were like $100, $150 a piece. Yeah. And the guy really thought that you didn't pull in the anchor and reuse it. He just thought you cut it off and went to the next place. So those are my 2 stories that come to mind.
Yeah, one came to mind too. It's a good action one. So flying, this is one I heard firsthand. Again, flying with people that one guy was also an admiral in the Coast Guard, right? So he was working, and Coast Guard helicopter was intercepting some drug runners, right? And they would come in, and they would kind of get close, and the drug runners were on their boat, and they would start shooting at the helicopter. Stop. So they would back off, and they'd go in again and try and take a look and try and yell at them through the radio and stuff. And as soon as they get close, they'd start shooting them with their assault rifles. So they'd back off, and he's like, we can't get close to them. We're not going to be able to follow them, because as soon as we get close, they start shooting at us. And over the frequency, there were 2 Navy F-18s that were
in the area
doing maneuvers. And they said, "This is Navy One."
Target practice, as a matter of fact.
Well, they didn't do target practice. I mean, that would have been illegal. But they're like Navy One in the area. You want us to go take a closer look for you?
Buzz them.
And he said they went over the deck at almost the speed of sound, and they went like 50 feet off the water, and it had a rooster tail.
Oh, so it hit that.
And it hit that boat, and it cut the boat in half.
No way.
Yeah, it like the
momentum
of that water. It was just like a knife edge, and it cut the drug.
Hydraulics will do that too.
Sure,
like you get a little pinhole in a D5 tractor.
Sure,
that can cut you
a
laser.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it was just like crazy, just like, and they're like called in, and he's like, we're now a search and rescue.
Never mind. So, yeah, I used to work up in the mountains at an old gold mine, and they used to use the head frame of the mine, which is where the bucket goes into the ground, the shaft, and they would use that the Navy. So they're coming from like the San Francisco Bay, right, and they're flying up the Sierras. And they're cutting down through these valleys. And like you said, almost going the speed of sound. Because I don't think they're allowed to go speed of sound on land.
Not over land, you're not supposed to.
So you didn't hear them coming.
Yeah.
Until they're like literally.
Yeah.
And one guy was down the hill fishing. And it scared him so much, he jumped in the water. He came up, he's all wet. And we didn't even you didn't have to tell us what happened. We knew because... something similar happened. You're right. You're on the ground when these guys go over your head.
Right. Yeah. Funny. Well, here, your choice. I can't remember.
I think it's yours.
Okay. What we got? Oh, you know what? We had 2. That was favorite dining experience. We must have been on the same vibe.
How funny is that? Huh?
Yeah.
We did that with. 2 other things too.
Yeah.
Great minds think alike.
That's right. Oh, here. I'm excited to hear this one. A crazy ex story.
Oh, man. Which one? Crazy ex story. This was sort of crazy. I went out with a gal. I was in high school. Like junior year, I went out with this gal for like 5 or 6 months. And 6 years later, I owned a restaurant and a review came out. And this girl called me. She goes, "Oh, I saw the review. Congratulations." And I didn't think anything of it, I'm like, "Oh, okay. Thanks." Then her best friend called me like 6 months later and said, "This girl's been stalking you ever since you went out, and she was married. She had a husband, and in their house she had like a little shrine for me." And I'm like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And what husband would put up with that crap? You know? I'd be like, you should go do something else.
Right? Oh, that's funny. So, all my crazy ex stories come from one crazy. There's a few crazy stories in that one, but it was the one was I thought we were well
broken up.
Yeah, well broke. I mean, it had been a couple, 2 or 3 years, right? And we were still like, kind of like, I mean, we still had each other's phone numbers and stuff,
Yeah.
but we hadn't.
You weren't going out.
No, no. But I'm down in Miami Beach, and she just says, well, it was COVID time, right? And she's like, well, I'm going to come down there and live and get a job or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's not really the best time to try and get a job during, but she's like, well, I'll pay rent. So I'm like, okay, because we're not dating, right? And she's like, so, but she comes and moves in, pays 1 month rent, and literally like, I wouldn't leave, just wouldn't leave. And finally, I ended up having her mom come down and get her, but it was her mom had to come down and get her because she wasn't leaving. She was just like, it was just like.
So had things changed with her mentally from the time you went out to then?
Oh yeah, she was just like, I think she wanted. It seemed like she wanted a sugar daddy, and that's not at all what I wanted. I mean, I wanted, and it was because, like I said, it was like kind of like in the early stages of COVID. It's hard enough. Most people are not having a job at all,
right.
You know, or they're working from home, and it's not a time that people really were hiring. So I don't know exactly sure, but it was miserable. It was actually very miserable because it was like somebody that you weren't interested in, but they like are sharing your house, not paying rent.
No offense, but what were you thinking?
Well, she was only supposed to be there for a short time, right? She's like, well, I'll pay rent for a month, and then I'll have my own job, my own place, and then it was just like, yeah, it was not good. So, but
I think also during COVID, I love that term, during COVID.
Right.
I think a lot of us, including myself, we're a little mixed up on what the heck was going on in the world.
Oh,
Plus the other influences. I'm sure we're learning with USAID and the money was spent with press all over the world, and in essence it was a big psyop.
Yeah, and it's pretty crazy how, I mean, you can say whatever you want, but being in the United States was by far the best place to be during the COVID years, because I had a friend that was down in Panama, and it was like coming up on 2 years later, and they were still only allowed to go outside for 2 hours a day, like on Tuesday, like 3 times a week for women and 4 times a week for men for 2 hours a day. And it was like, this is like 2 years later. It's like, I mean, it was crazy.
Well, I know the divorce rate went up, I think, from COVID. But it makes you also wonder, or at least I did, what about all the affairs that were going on?
I don't know.
But because you couldn't cheat on your wife, because you couldn't, go meet her, or your girlfriend, or, there was no, probably office romances.
Yeah,
went down about 97%, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So I wonder what the outcome of all that change.
A lot of places are requiring people to go back into the office now.
Yeah, they're requiring all the government employees.
Yeah. So
it's welfare otherwise, right? If someone pays you and you don't go to work, isn't that welfare?
Right. So
I had an employee who pulled that on me.
Really? They show up and
I kept paying him, and it turns out he was never working. He was low on the totem pole.
Yeah.
And I'm like, would someone really do that for like $1,600 a month? Actually, people do that for $20 a month. So, the problem we're having now is it's turning into millions and billions.
Yeah.
They'll definitely do it for that kind of money, right?
Right. Well, thanks for the wine.
It was interesting wine. You said you were thinking about doing some bourbons. I've always had this. So this was my grandparents', and it was always on the shelf, and I wanted it, and I asked for it, and I was told that, no, you can't inherit this.
Okay.
Well, everybody died. So I'm the only guy left. So it's full of little brandy snifters.
Oh, okay.
And I've never actually used it.
We should
use it next time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be the,
I'll bring over some. Well, I could.
you can have anything in it. I don't think it's by law.
No. That'd be fun. That'd be fun to open it up and bring it over. I'll. If we're gonna use that, I'll bring over some special ones. Okay. There are 3 different ones than we had last time. I'll bring over a E.H. Taylor, which is a rare one that's hard to find. That's Buffalo Trace Distillery, and I'll pick up a couple. I have a couple other ones, or maybe we'll even do Scotch. We could do Scotch. There's maybe a good Scotch tasting would be good, so you can contrast it from the bourbons.
Or we find someone who's got a really expensive brandy collection.
There we go.
I had a neighbor. He had 2 daughters, and I don't know what. I'm not gonna say how old I was, but I shouldn't have been drinking. Let's put it that way. And he had a bottle of Napoleon brandy up in the cupboard, and we drank the whole damn thing. And he knew we drank it, and I can't tell you how it affected me, but it really affected me. And he never narked on us. He never told the parents. We paid for a new bottle, and it was pretty expensive. At least at the time, it seemed expensive.
The worst.
Hangover?
No, the worst. I'm trying to think of the right word because it was just. I'll just tell the story. So I had this bottle of Scotch that I had gotten over in Scotland, right? And got this bottle of, and it wasn't just any bottle of Scotch I got in Scotland. I was out walking, and I was walking at the time. My father-in-law and his wife, she walked with a cane, so she was walking slow, and my wife was walking behind. And I went out and walked. I was probably ahead of them like a half mile. And pretty soon this black Mercedes SUV pulls up beside me, and they drive on the other side. So the window rolls down, and he's like, "Hello, old chap." He's like, "Would you like a ride up to the castle?" And I'm like, "Sure." It was like I'm in my 20s and drive up to the castle.
Was the blue Popon commercial going through you?
Yeah. But
Grey Poupon, sorry.
Yeah, Grey Poupon. And he pulls up. He's like, it's a goofy old place. It was Glom's Castle.
Glom's?
Glom's, yeah. And the Queen Mum was actually in the garden. He's like, just don't go over to the garden, and you can't go into the house because we're in residence. But it's like, feel free to look around the other gardens and stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, his driveway was like a half mile also. So I mean, now I'm way out. And I was getting ready to walk back. He didn't offer to give me a drive back, but he did. He came out
downhill, right?
Yeah, he came out and he had a bottle of Glom's Castle Reserve, and named after the castle. And he gave this bottle to me, and he's like, whatever. Said our goodbyes and walked back and met up with, and they didn't know where that guy was because now it's been like an hour. They're like, we thought the Scotland Yard got you or whatever because they knew I was by Glom's Castle, and told him the story that Lord Strathmore was the guy that picked me up in the SUV. He's the nephew of the Queen at the time.
Okay.
So, but he's like, I'm Lord Strathmore. He gives me this bottle of Scotch.
No offense, but he's probably a little bored too.
Right? And so I go back, take this bottle back, pride and joy, go through my marriage, go through birth of 4 daughters, go through a divorce, and I am staying in this apartment that I used to Airbnb. And I had this bottle hidden behind the bookshelf, behind everything. And I came back one time, and I'm cleaning up, and I'm like, that's weird. And I pull it out. The Airbnb person pulled it out, opened it, and drank half the bottle. I was just like, I was so upset. I didn't do anything. I drank the other half of the bottle. That's all I did.
Yeah, no one else is getting this but me.
Right. But it was just like, I guess that was my karma for hanging on for too long. So, but well, that's about it for this week, I think.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, but
well, good night, everybody. Happy trails. Good health, especially now that we got someone in our government who supposedly cares about our health. That's good change.
Right.
And we'll see you next week. Good night.